On June 12, 2026, the world's most powerful AI models simply stopped responding. No warning, no explanation, just silence. Why did the US government force Anthropic to pull the plug on its flagship intelligence just 3 days after launch? To understand the shutdown, we have to understand what Fable 5 and Mythos 5 actually were. They weren't just updates, they were a new tier of intelligence. Anthropic called it the Mythos class, a level of capability that sat far above their previous flagship, Opus. Fable 5 was the public version, equipped with a safety layer. Mythos 5 was the raw powerhouse, restricted to high-level government partners. The launch on June 9th was a sensation. The metrics Anthropic release suggested a paradigm shift in software engineering and science. Stripe reported using Fable 5 to migrate 50 million lines of code in a single day, a task that would take a human team months. In Agentic coding, the Mythos class didn't just win, it dominated, solving complex architectural problems that left other models behind. But it was the cybersecurity data that truly raised eyebrows. Mythos 5 turned security bugs into working attacks with terrifying efficiency. In biology, it demonstrated a superhuman ability to predict experimental properties of viral capsids, a key step in drug and vaccine development. But behind the scenes, friction with Washington was reaching a breaking point. The government was getting spooked. Anthropic had recently clashed with the administration over their refusal to allow the models to be used in fully autonomous weapons systems. Following this refusal, the Department of Defense reportedly labeled Anthropic a supply chain risk, a designation usually reserved for foreign adversaries. Everything changed at 5:21 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, June 12th. Anthropic received a legal directive that was unprecedented in AI history. The U.S. Department of Commerce issued an emergency export control directive, citing immediate national security concerns. The order mandated an immediate suspension of access for all foreign nationals, both outside and even inside the United States. Because Anthropic couldn't instantly segment their global user base by nationality, they were forced to disable the models for everyone. The government's primary justification was a report of a narrow, non-universal jailbreak. They believed the safety layer had been bypassed. The jailbreak reportedly allowed the model to find vulnerabilities while it was supposed to be fixing them, a subtle but dangerous distinction. Anthropic pushed back, arguing the technique only identified minor, known flaws that existing models like GPT 5.5 could already find. But the government was focused on the scale. Mythos-class models could automate the creation of exploits against critical infrastructure at an industrial pace. The fear was that these models could dismantle the aging technology that banks and power grids rely on before humans could even react. For the first time, the US government used its export control power to physically disable access to commercially deployed software. At 9:59 p.m. Eastern Time, the API went dark. Developers across the globe saw their applications crash as Fable 5 vanished from the servers. Anthropic had built a fallback system to downgrade queries to Opus 4.8, but the total removal order rendered even this safety net useless. The industry was in shock. The idea that a government could simply turn off an entire class of technology overnight changed the risk profile of AI. Ironically, Anthropic's own CEO had recently warned that frontier models were beginning to pose real risks, a warning that likely fueled the government's panic. Anthropic had even mandated a 30-day data retention policy to monitor for misuse. It wasn't enough to satisfy the Department of Commerce. Looking back at the benchmarks, the power was clear. Mythos 5 was a massive leap forward in reasoning, biology, and cybersecurity. It wasn't just powerful, it was efficient. The Frontier Code benchmark showed it solving the hardest coding tasks at a fraction of the previous cost. Despite the power, tests for misaligned behavior showed the Mythos class was actually more stable than many smaller, older models. Anthropic called the shutdown a misunderstanding and criticized the lack of transparency in how the directive was handled. This event has sparked a fierce debate about AI governance. Who gets to decide when a model is too dangerous to exist? It highlighted the extreme risk of centralization. If a single government can flip a switch, is any business built on these APIs truly safe? This has led to a surge in interest for local, decentralized models that cannot be disabled by a single government decree. As of today, Claude Fable 5 and Mythos 5 remain offline. The servers are quiet and the code sits behind a legal barrier. Anthropic is still working with the Department of Commerce to restore access, but the trust between the industry and Washington is fractured. We caught a glimpse of a new frontier, a level of intelligence that could solve the world's hardest problems in hours. But we also saw the double-edged sword of that power. The more capable a model becomes at helping us, the more dangerous it becomes if misused. June 12, 2026 will be remembered as the day the government physically intervened in the deployment of a mind. What other models are being developed behind closed doors? And how many more will be disabled before they reach the public? For now, the Mythos class remains a ghost in the machine, a promise of power that was too intense for the world to handle. The battle over AI control is just beginning. Stay tuned as we monitor the negotiations between Anthropic and the US government. The shutdown of Fable 5 and Mythos 5 wasn't just a technical error, it was a statement. Thanks for watching.